Welcome to the 17th instalment of our exploration of Dracula. Anyway, so to continue, so Mina is going to join everyone at Carfax, and we have Professor again. "And wonderful Madam Mina, pearl among women, she arrived, but I cannot stay. She must go to your house, friend John. You must meet her at the station, telegraph her en route, so that she may be prepared." So she's going to become part of the main action now as well. And then we have Stoker's references to all of these sharing that's going on of all the story itself. So the story that you're reading is kind of part of the story as well. So it's Stoker's way of involving the reader actually. There's a connection there, isn't there, between what you're reading and what they're reading. They're reading the same thing that you're reading. Not literally the same thing, but you see what I mean. It's a good one for crossing boundaries, isn't it, as well? You see, it's good. So, and may the beginning of the end to you and me and many another, or may sound the death knell of the undead who walk the earth. So Van Helsing is very clear about the actual stakes here, if you pardon the pun, stakes. But anyway, the stakes, the undead will take over basically. And so we've said a while back, I think, probably about chapter 2 or so, is that we talked about how vampirism and Dracula's ambitions are analogous to the idea of what if some kind of unknowable or more powerful force took over the British Empire and invaded. So it represents maybe a bit of, I suppose, a bit of anxiety there, or maybe you could say it's Victorian culture exploring a kind of fantasy of what would happen and then ultimately overcoming that threat. But anyway, so here's the diary. We've said all about that as well, and the meeting Dr. Seward as well. Then there's a little bit of moment of awkwardness where they both end up blushing about talking about Lucy and knowing that Dr. Seward was sweet on her as well. But again, it's another way of really of connecting all the characters together, isn't it? And I must be careful not to frighten her. Well, he doesn't realise what she's been through herself or what she knows about her husband's been through. This bit is funny because it's Dr. Seward shows Mina his phonograph and she gets quite excited. It takes all sorts. But remember, it's advanced modern technology and people wouldn't see them very often as well. So that's all part of that. So that's all good. Then again, Stoker also makes sure he, again, plugs in what we would think of as plot holes. And he has Dr. Seward realise that even though Dr. Seward, you know, I've said before about Dr. Seward having kind of book smarts, as we'd call them, but he didn't realise that keeping his diary by speaking it, he can't really bookmark it. The technology doesn't really allow that. You'd like to think maybe labels would be a good idea, wouldn't you? But anyway, you see, I do not know how to pick out any particular part of the diary. Wah, wah. So he's got here a line realising that he's not realised that there's any way to access the particular dates that he wanted to. Sorry, Dr. Seward, you're going to have to wait a few more decades for that kind of technology to come along. What a silly sausage. But don't worry, because there's another piece of modern technology coming to Dr. Seward's aid and also Mina's skills. She can write it all up on her typewriter. Dun, dun, dun. But of course, then he's a bit worried about that because it means somebody else reading his personal diary, even though he's made it as a recording. And Mina also offers to return her own diaries and letters and Jonathan's in return, so they both exchange information. So really this is again another way of getting all the characters up to speed about everything that's been happening. That is a wonderful machine, but it is cruelly true. So again, the amazing technology. This is Mina listening to Dr. Seward's account. It was like a soul crying out to Almighty God. I suppose there could be some interesting ideas to explore about Victorian society and technology and late Victorian era becoming more secular. Maybe there is something in there. I haven't fully formed that thought, but it feels like there could be something in that actually. Then moving on, I didn't highlight too much on this page itself, but it's really just Mina being brought up to speed with all the situation and events surrounding Lucy's. Oh yeah, then I'd highlighted that fortunately I'm death as well, of a fainting disposition, because we've said before how Stoker gives Mina qualities where she's very much in some ways a traditional Victorian female character, in other ways that she isn't, and here's one of her not being traditional because she's not a fainter, as a lot of Victorian heroines might be. Then this is here because that's a deliberate juxtaposition between, we've got good men and monsters, so good and evil. So again, the story of Dracula is a battle of good over evil as well. Then we have the references to, these are the accounts of the Bloofer Lady as well, which are being referred to here. So the borrowed files of the Westminster Gazette and the Pall Mall Gazette and took them to my room. And then I remember how much the Daily Graph and the Whitby Gazette, of which I had made cuttings, helped us to understand the terrible events at Whitby. That would maybe suggest she didn't write those articles earlier on, but you know, that's still up in the air. I still think she did, if you remember that. And then back to Dr. Seward's diary. Harker's joining them. He's arrived. He's uncommonly clever, if one can judge from his face. That's another reference to physiognomy, which is that pseudoscience that's come up before. Judging by his own wonderful experiences, I don't think he means wonderful in the modern sense of it's great. It's wonderful in the sense of very hard to understand kind of wonder. Almost like saying fantastic, but not fantastic, if you see what I mean, in the modern sense. Hopefully you know what I mean. Anyway, so that's a reference to what happened at the start of the novel. He's exploring Dracula's castle, wasn't he? Do you remember that? Going back a long time ago. And then we have the story that you're reading is kind of part of the narrative itself, because they're collecting all of the information together, and these letters about where the boxes go that Dracula brought in, all of that, we're going to see all of that stuff. All of this is all brought together. So again, Stoker is very meticulous about the details that he's putting into the novel and trying to make it all seem as realistic as possible, even though actually it's not really realistic at all. And then Dr. Seward, he seems really slow in the uptake, doesn't he? Strange that it never struck me that their very next house might be the Count's hiding place. Yeah, okay. Goodness knows that we had enough clues from the conduct of the patient Renfield. This is a little bit weird because, and this and in the next chapter as well, like with Renfield, the connections don't seem to be consistently kept together really. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in the future. Stop That Way Madness Lies, that's a reference to, an exophoric reference to King Lear actually, which has got a theme of madness on it as well. Stop That Way Madness Lies. And then putting the cylinders into type, that's a reference to technology. That's the reference to the phonograph and the cylinders, and then Mina has typed them up, and so that's what's going on there with that bit. So seeing Renfield then have a straight waistcoat, that's a straight jacket, so that's an archaic word there as well. And you can see as well, I should have highlighted that bit. He is himself zoophagus, and in his wild ravings outside the chapel door of the deserted house, he always spoke of master. So really, they should be making more connections here, but they're not. But I suppose again, it's dramatic irony, and it's about creating suspense, isn't it? So Jonathan Harker's journal, he's been doing his detective work, trying to find out where all these boxes have been delivered to and everything. And he can also link some of the letters to things he remembers from seeing in Dracula's castle itself. American, I'm not sure why I highlighted that really. I just thought it was interesting as an idiom, taking no chances, and we're so used to it. We didn't even, I didn't know it was an Americanism, so it's been long established, obviously. We have, again, more of Jonathan Harker's detective work there as well. And here we have, I kind of highlighted it here with this sausage, but we've got a very early reference, I think possibly the earliest reference to a telephone in literature, and that's really high-tech modern technology as well, and it's efficient, and it facilitates the narrative, and it's making things more efficient. And then less convincing though is the cheesy stereotypical Cockney dialogue that we get. That here house, governor, is the rummiest I ever was in. Blimey, but it ain't been touched since 100 years. There was just that thing in the place you might have slept when it went out hurting your bones. So it's a bit Dick Van Dyke, Mary Poppins style. But anyway, it's doing a job, and the job is making you think of Cockneys and workers, and that's all it's doing. So you can talk about sociolect, you can talk about dialect, accent and dialect, and how Stoker gives that impression of it in the same way that he gives a sense of Van Helsing's Dutch accent and dialect. So you have that as well. Then remember all the references to the Demeter, the ship that Dracula was transferred on as well. So the box is about where they're going to the old chapel at Carfax. And again, looking at all of those, and that was referred to earlier on as well when Renfield was hurling abuse at the carters, the delivery people. And so more emphasis of Dracula's inhuman qualities here, and also we can talk about zoomorphism. We've also got this capitalized non-specific noun, so thing as well, and deliberate antithesis there, human and beast. And then we have highlighting again another idiom of blowing my trumpet, as Mr. Morris expressed it. So again, we're used to hearing that as a phrase, but again, it must be another Americanism or as an idiom. Did you write all this, Mrs. Harker? So again, Stoker emphasises Mina's exceptional qualities. She's a combination of what they would see as stereotypical female qualities, but also with male qualities as well. So that's why she's so impressive as a character. But she's showing her maternal side here. Look at all this. So I suppose there is something in woman's nature that makes a man free to break down before her and express his feelings on the tender emotional side without feeling it derogatory to his manhood. So this is when Arthur breaks down and she comforts him, basically. So Lord Godalming, so using his formal title there. But it's okay, there's no hanky-panky going on. It's all fine and all above board. I sat down beside him and took his hand. I hope he didn't think it forward of me, and that he ever thinks of it afterwards, you will never have such a thought. There I wrong him, I know you never will. He is too true a gentleman. I said to him, for I could see that his heart was breaking. So the extreme emotion, she emphasises, well, so I should say Stoker emphasises the formality, using the formal title there. There's a degree of distance implied. She's not calling him Arthur there at that point. So Stoker's making it very clear that there's no hanky-panky going on. There's nothing saucy going on. It's just she's comforting him. She's just comforting him. There's nothing else. It's all fine. With a sob, he laid his head on my shoulder and cried like a wearied child whilst he shook with emotion. What's good with this is that often in adaptations of Dracula, or actually in lots of things you see, lots of horror films and anything like genre-based things, they don't often show the impact that normal people would feel in these kind of situations. And Stoker, because it's an epistolary novel, he's got space to do this. He's allowing his characters to actually show grief, and Arthur here is showing grief, and you don't normally get that a lot of the time because I just want to speed things along and just keep things moving. And it also is a good sequence to show Mina's personality as well. And so she's got these Again, we've said like stereotypical feminine qualities, so her mother ability, her maternal abilities, I should say, are coming through here. So we women have something of the mother in us that makes us rise above smaller matters when the mother spirit is invoked. I felt this big sorrowing man's head resting on me, as though it were that of the baby that some day may lie on my bosom, and I stroked his hair as though he were my own child. I never thought at the time how strange it all was. You're telling us. But anyway, again, Stoker makes it clear there's no funny business because he's emphasising it's maternal. There's no romance here at all. There's no impropriety. It's fine. She's just comforting him. It's very important. Yeah, so he makes sure that we can't jump to any unnecessary conclusions. And Quincy also, he's not far away, so there's again no funny business going on because Quincy is very nearby. So it's all clear. But notice as well, Stoker uses how is art. So he refers to them. He uses this informal nickname to describe him, doesn't he? And as opposed to Lord Godalming. So when Mina was given the lines earlier on, it didn't. Again, it shows that there's that distance between the two. There's no kind of informality here with it. Little girl, you'll never regret that true-hearted kindness so long as ever you live. Then he went into the study to his friend, as he goes and joins Arthur. Little girl, the very words he had used to Lucy, and oh, but he proved himself a friend. Now that could actually be foreshadowing what happens to Quincy at the end. It shouldn't be a spoiler, but I won't say it just in case. But anyway, Quincy. Anyway, so that is the end of that chapter. So it's quite a short one. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. Like, subscribe, comment, listen to the others. Stay safe out there.